Called me about a month ago. I looked at my calendar. I said, he's a friend of mine, so I know him as Wayne. I said, Wayne, that's the day we turn the clocks ahead an hour. I'm going to have to drive an hour to church and I'm going to lose an hour's sleep. And I said, all right, I'll do it. Your service is at 10:30, right? Because some weeks I go to church in Branford, Connecticut, where my mother-in-law lives, and their service is at 8:30 in the morning. So imagine those poor folks this morning. Whoa. But I was driving up this morning, and I said, I think this is what we should do. Now that you're here, turn your clocks back an hour. And don't turn them ahead until 2 o'clock this afternoon. And that'll give me an extra hour to be able to preach. Isn't that a great idea? So go ahead and adjust your clocks if you need to. And thank you for being on time this morning. Lots to talk about this morning as I share with you what the Holy Spirit has shared with me in preparation for today. And I have been so hungry to share this with you. I have lived it over and over. And it's been hard not to talk about it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I said, Lord, I can't talk about this because Corey will know what I'm going to say. And then he'll put it all over Facebook. No. We have a great relationship that we formed just by being together here. I think it was a year ago this month that I preached here for my first time. And I probably told you at that point in time, I was born in North Adams, Massachusetts. I was raised in Lowell, Massachusetts. My grandmother lived in North Adams, so we went this way. We used Route 2 back in those days to travel, so the Mohawk Trail and that way. Some of my best friends at Camp Charlton growing up were from Springfield, Westfield area. You know the Carrington family? Anybody here know the Carringtons? Yeah, they're Westfield people. Marilyn was one of my closest friends growing up. And her brother Eddie used to work in the kitchen with my mom at Charlton. And so a lot of good memories. When I crossed that Massachusetts state line, coming north even this morning, I came home. And it's good to be home. And the first church that Amber and I pastored was not far from here. We were in West Brookfield, Massachusetts for 18 months. And God established our ministry there. And even though that church today is no longer in existence, we have good friends from way back then. And so we're going to do some sharing. That's all the biographical sharing we'll do this morning. But let's go to God's Word. I'm reading from Acts chapter 1 this morning. Acts chapter 1, beginning with verse 1. Luke is the writer of the book of Acts, and he's writing to his friend Theophilus. He's already written one letter to him called the Gospel of Luke. And now he picks up with his thoughts to Theophilus, and he says in Acts chapter 1, verse 1, "In my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and to teach until the day he was taken up to heaven, after giving instructions through the Holy Spirit to the apostle he had chosen. After his suffering, he showed himself to these men and gave many convincing proofs that he was alive. He appeared to them over a period of 40 days and spoke about the kingdom of God. On one occasion, while he was eating with them, he gave them this command: 'Do not leave Jerusalem, but wait for the gift my Father promised, which you have heard me speak about. For John baptized with water, but in a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit.' So when they met together, they asked him, 'Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?' He said to them, 'It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." After he had said this, he was taken up before their very eyes, and a cloud hid him from their sight. They were looking intently up into the sky as he was going, when suddenly 2 men dressed in white stood beside them. "Men of Galilee," they said, "why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." I want to talk to you for the next hour and a half or so, or less, about this same Jesus. Imagine the angel said to the disciples, "What are you doing? Standing here, just kind of looking around. You got work to do. This same Jesus who was taken from you will come again the same way that he left, from the clouds." I want to talk to you about this same Jesus this morning. I want to share with you some things that Jesus said to his disciples, which he says even to the church today and to our world at large. In John chapter 3, verse 1 says, "Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, 'Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God. No one could perform the miraculous signs you are doing if God were not with him.' In reply, Jesus declared, 'I tell you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again.' 'How can a man be born when he is old?' Nicodemus asked. 'Surely he cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb to be born.' Jesus answered, 'I tell you the truth. No one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised by my saying, you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." I want to share this morning, this same Jesus had said to Nicodemus, "You must be born again." If anyone is going to inherit eternal life, they must be born again. I want to begin our thought this morning on the foundation that if you are here and you have not yet been born again, that's where it all starts. You must be born again. The same Jesus who is coming back for all of those who have had the born again experience. The year was 1979, March 4th, actually, in 1979. I accepted the pastorate in Wanacue, New Jersey. When I interviewed with the church board, it was a group of 18 people. They had had a church there since, I think, 1926 or something like that. And they had had some good growth years, but they had saw a lot of people come and go. And before I came to be their pastor, they met as a church. And 18 of them got together and said, all right, here's the deal. We're either going to close this church or we're going to call a young preacher to come. And we're going to say to him what the children of Israel said to Joshua when Joshua took over from Moses. We'll do whatever you tell us to do as long as you listen to what God has to say. And so in our interview, they said to me, Pastor, if you choose to come here, we will never say to you, we don't do it that way here. Or we've never done it that way before. We will say, as long as you are doing what God has called you to do, Pastor, we are behind you 100%. I was pastoring for about a year, and God was doing some wonderful things. A woman came in who was a single mom with 3 daughters. The youngest daughter was 7 years old. They got saved, and they wanted to be baptized. And so I sat with them and I taught the mother and the 3 daughters about water baptism. And I went to the board and I said, I'm going to be baptizing Pat and her 3 daughters. And the chairman of the board looked at me and he said, Pastor, Barbara's only 7 years old. I said, I know. He said, we've never baptized anyone younger than 8 years old. I said, I know. And you told me you'd never tell me we haven't done it that way before. Her mother and her older sisters are getting baptized, and Barbara has prayed the sinner's prayer. And at 7 years old, she's invited Jesus into her life. And I'm not going to tell her I won't baptize her. I'm going to baptize her, her mother, and her 2 sisters, and her. And so Barbara got baptized at 7 years of age. She got baptized on Sunday night. Monday, she went to school. In school on Monday, she said to her best friend, guess what I did last night? Her best friend said, what? She said, I was baptized in water as a public confession of my faith in Jesus Christ. And Carrie said, can I get baptized? And Barbara said, do you know Jesus as your personal Savior? She said, no, how do I do it? She said, close your eyes. And there at recess at the public school in Northvale, or in Wanacue, New Jersey, Barbara prayed the sinner's prayer with Carrie, and Carrie was born again. Barbara said, meet me after school. After school, Barbara and Carrie walked to Barbara's house. Barbara filled up the bathtub. Barbara's mother called me and said, Pastor, yes, Pat, how can I help you? You're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you. What? Barbara led her best friend to the Lord today in school and then brought her home and baptized her in her school clothes in my tub. Carrie is standing in front of me now, wringing wet. What am I going to do? I said, I think you ought to take Carrie down to her house, explain to her mother why she's wringing wet. She said, Pastor, you don't know her mother. I said, no, I don't. What are you talking about? She said, she is one of the meanest ladies in this town. She will curse me out. What am I going to do? I said, you're going to walk down to her house. She only lived about 5 houses down. You're going to walk down to her house and you're going to tell her what Carrie did, what Barbara did for her. And I'll be praying for you while you go. Call me when you get home. She called me about 45 minutes later. She said, Pastor, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? She said, Donna looked at Carrie in her wringing wet clothes, and when I explained what happened, she looked at Carrie and said, you're going to have to explain that to your father tonight when he gets home. That night, Carrie sat at the supper table with her mother and her father. She was an only child. And the mother said, Carrie, you have something to tell your father? She said, yes, Dad. Today I accepted Jesus as my personal Savior at school. And as a public confession of my faith after school, Barbara baptized me in water at her house. And her father looked at her and said, "Oh, so what do you do now?" She said, "Well, Dad, I think I should start going to Sunday school." He said, "Where would you go?" She said, "Well, Mrs. Fakina said I could go with her and Barbara and her sisters to church. So I'll go where they're going to church." He said, "Okay. When will you start?" "This coming Sunday." "Okay." Sunday morning, Barbara got up, got ready for Sunday school, went out the door and went to Sunday school. The second Sunday, she got up, she got dressed, she was going out the door, and Mom and Dad were having one of those moments of disagreement. And they were speaking like two non-Christian adults who had disagreements. They were loud, they were mad, and they were nasty. And Barbara, as she was going out the door, Carrie, as she was going out to the door, turned, she's a mama's girl, so Mama could do no wrong, but Daddy, he could do no right. She looked at her father right in the eye as she was leaving that morning, and she said, "Dad, I'm going to ask my Sunday school teacher to pray for you." And with that, she walked out the door. He stopped, dead in his tracks. He looked at his wife and he said, "We better get dressed and go over there and find out what they're teaching her at that church." They got dressed that morning and came to church. They came in, they sat in the back of the church. At the end of the service, when I gave the altar call, they came forward and accepted Jesus as their personal Savior. Monday, Carrie's dad came to my office. He said, "Pastor, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I was in church yesterday morning." I said, "I know." At that point, the church was running about 50 people, so it was no problem knowing everybody that was there. He said, "I'm Carrie's dad." I said, "I know." He said, "I accepted Jesus as my personal Savior yesterday morning." I said, "Wonderful." He said, "Pastor, you need to know something." He said, "When Carrie told me she'd gotten baptized that afternoon by Barbara, I remembered that as a boy, in the projects of Patterson, New Jersey, where I lived, every summer, a woman would come and teach what they called DVBS, and I would go to it." I said, "Oh yeah, Daily Vacation Bible School." He said, "I don't remember much of what she said, but I did remember when Carrie told me that she had been baptized as a public confession of her faith in Jesus Christ. I remembered that's what that teacher taught. That if you get saved this week, you need to get baptized as a public confession of your faith in Jesus Christ." And he said, "I need your help." I said, "You want to get baptized?" He said, "Oh yeah, that too." But he said, "I went back to where that woman was from today because I wanted to tell her something. But that church is gone. It's been torn down and I don't know where it is." I said, "Do you remember the name of the church?" He said, "Yeah, it was Bethany Church." I said, "Oh, that church moved out of Patterson years ago. It's over in Wyckoff. I know the pastor. He's a good friend of mine." He said, "Well, I need to get in touch with that woman." He said, "I save everything. Here's a postcard. I went up in the attic yesterday and I got a postcard and it said, 'Dear Carl, thank you for attending Vacation Bible School this year. I will always be praying for you. Mrs. French.'" He said, "Pastor, she sent me that card 28 years ago. Her prayers were answered yesterday. I want her to know that." I called my friend. I said, "Otto, do you know a Mrs. French?" He said, "I know of her." He said, "She used to be a very faithful member of the church here, but she's retired and moved to Florida. But some of my ladies still keep in touch with her." When I baptized Carl and Donna and Carrie, for real, it was that night that I baptized 28 people because a little 7-year-old girl got born again and went to school and told her friend. You see, Jesus said, "You must be born again. It's the beginning of a whole new life. Let me go on. John 6:48 says, Jesus is talking and he says, I am the bread of life. Your forefathers ate the manna in the desert, yet they died. But here is the bread that comes down from heaven, which a man may eat and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. The Sadducees and the Pharisees heard Jesus say, you must eat of my flesh. And they said, what is he, a cannibal? Eating flesh? Paul explains it as Jesus taught his disciples in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23. Paul writes, the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, this cup is a new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Oh, he wasn't talking. It was like with Nicodemus. He said, Nicodemus, you're thinking in the natural. I'm talking in the spiritual. You must be born again. No, you don't enter a second time into your mother's womb, but you ask forgiveness of your sin and you invite Christ to come into your life and you become a new creature in Christ Jesus. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things become new. And then you must eat the bread of life. What was Jesus saying there? Well, John writes about it in John's Gospel, chapter 1. He says, the Word, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And not anything that was made without the Word. But the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That Word, we call it the Bible today. The Word of God. And you must be born again and then be partakers of scriptural truth and begin to apply it to your daily life. It isn't simply a prayer asking for forgiveness. It's a prayer asking for forgiveness and then beginning to walk in the light of truth contained within God's Word. If you're a true believer, you must be a student of God's Word. How did Paul say it to Timothy? Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Jesus, this same Jesus that was taken up, said to his disciples, you must eat of my flesh, meaning the Word of God. You must allow that to be that which sustains your life. None of you would go through the day or a week without eating. You need God's Word daily in your life. Matthew chapter 16, verse 5 says, when they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. Oh, boy. Be careful, Jesus said to them. Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The disciples, they discussed this among themselves and said, it's because we didn't bring any bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked, you of little faith, Why are you talking among yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000? And how many basketfuls you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking about bread? Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Then they understood that he was not telling them to be a guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. If you hear anything that I'm saying this morning, I want you to hear what Jesus said. You must be born again. You must become a student of God's Word, the Holy Scriptures, the Bible. And be aware of the teachings of this world. For I can tell you this morning, more than ever before, the teachings of this world are so anti-Christ and anti-Scripture that if you're not founded in the Scriptures, if your children are not founded in the Scriptures, it won't be Dr. Zeus you have to worry about. It'll be the general population of the world who will be teaching them regularly. Those Christians, you can't listen to them. They're all haters. Haters. You don't understand. We're lovers. But I have to remind you this morning, Jesus said, be careful of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. We must be alert to the teachings of the world around us. Don't bury your head in the sand and not think that they're teaching false doctrine or darkness. For Satan is using them as his instruments. And we as believers must stand on the foundation of God's Word. This is truth. All else is false. Darkness. Let me go on. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, Jesus says to his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me will find it. What good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he has done. I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Jesus said, beware of the teachings of the world, and listen to me. You must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Let me put it to you as simply as I can possibly put it to you this morning. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, I want to do your will. I can tell you this morning, it's not what you want. It's what he wants. I can also tell you this. If you will yield to God's will, you will find the greatest blessings in life you could possibly ever find. I know. I came to Jesus on the King's Highway. Some of you were on the Jericho Road and left on the side of the road, battered and wounded by the world, when a good Samaritan passed you by. But I was brought home from church, from the hospital, and taken right to church. I was probably less than 7 days old the first Sunday I attended church. And I've attended church, well, I won't say every Sunday, but I can probably count on one hand over the last 70 years how many times I've missed church. Not that I always wanted to go, but I had parents who said, this is the way, walk ye in it. I can tell you, I was no more than 5 or 6, maybe 7, when I invited Jesus into my heart. And never one day that I can remember have I regretted that decision. But it did require me to pray, not my will, Lord, but yours be done. My dad and mom took me to a CA rally. Anybody remember CA rallies? They were youth rallies back in the early days of the Assemblies of God. We called ourselves Christ's ambassadors. We had monthly CA rallies. And a missionary spoke one night at a CA rally, and I'll never forget my dad. After it was over, he said to me, Ron, are you okay? Yeah. You responded to the altar call tonight. Yeah. Is God calling you to be a missionary? I don't think so, Dad. But I want to be willing to be a missionary. He told me that night, I had a struggle tonight because I had to let go of you. You were at the altar. And I was saying, Lord, no, not missions. Don't take him away from me. I want him to serve you all the days of his life, but he can do it in the church right here in Lowell or wherever I am. Don't call him to Africa or to South America where he'll be removed from me. I had to let go. Lord, if that's your will, guide his life. I say to you this morning, every one of us must pray that kind of prayer. Lord, not my will, but thine be done. He won't call all of us to be missionaries. I was praying for the young people of this church. Lord, let them hear that message that if you have a call on their life, that they'll be willing to say, Lord, I'll go. I'll do what you want me to do. I'll be what you want me to be. But I can tell you, every one of you here this morning, God has a plan and a purpose for your lives as well. And what you need to be praying is, Lord, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I want to be who you want me to be. I want to say what you want me to say. I want to go where you want me to go. I want to do what you want me to do. This same Jesus who said, I am coming again, has said, you must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. What is God's will for your life? I don't know the particulars of God's will for your life, but I can give you this. God's will is for you to live out your future for him. Let me spell it out for you. The F in future means free from sin. It is God's will that you be free from sin. The U is united with Christ. It is God's will that you be united with Christ. The T in future is transformed. God doesn't want you to be conformed to this world, but transformed. The second U is unlimited in power. There isn't anything that you can't do if God desires you to do it. I think I told you maybe the last time I was here, several years ago, I was praying and God spoke to me and told me to do something that I couldn't do. And I told him in my prayer, Father, that's impossible. I can't do that. And if you remember, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, oh, I didn't ask you for your ability. I asked you for your availability. You say yes, and I will use you. and work through you to accomplish my will. And I watched God help me do the impossible. Because I said, yes, Lord. Based on your abilities, I will do what you've asked me to do. He calls us and he says, you must do my will. The R in future is renewed. And I love the E in future. A lot of people think I think it means eternal. No. I like this. Effervescent. It is God's will that you live life more abundantly. And that's like effervescence. That's like Alka-Seltzer taking its fizz in the glass. God wants us to live abundant life. He's got a lot of exciting things for us to do. If you'll let God work in your life, you will see things happen that you never thought were possible. But he'll make it possible. And he'll use you to get it accomplished. I've got to hurry. This same Jesus in Acts chapter 1 verse 8 said, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. He doesn't just say you must be born again. He doesn't just say you must make my word the center of your life. He doesn't just say you must deny yourself and do my will. He says to us this morning, you must let your light shine. Don't just shine in church. Go back out into the highways and byways of life and be his witnesses. There are Carries and Carls out there that people have been praying for years. And if you will let your light shine, their prayers will be answered. Carl prayed for his dad, and I think I told you this the last time I was here. Carl prayed for his dad for years. His dad was an alcoholic and a mean man. Taught Carl everything he knew. Until Carl got saved. Then Carl began to witness to his father, and his father didn't want to hear it. Well, one night his father called him and said, Carl, I need to go to the hospital. Would you come take me? Carl got in his car and drove over to pick up his dad, and realized this is not good. Said, on the way to the hospital, he said to his father, Dad, do you want me to pray for you? His father, in his normal way, said, what do you think, I don't know how to pray? Carl was a grown man at that point in time, but he was afraid of his father. And he said, well, Dad, why don't you lead in prayer, and I'll just agree with you in prayer. And so there at the parking lot of the emergency room of the hospital in Patterson, New Jersey, where Carl was born, Carl's dad bowed his head and prayed. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Carl sat next to his 80-some-year-old father in the car, and his heart was broken. 80-plus years old, and the only prayer he understands or knows is that child's prayer. He went into the hospital with his father, and within a matter of a couple of hours, his father passed away. Carl came back to the car. He was heartbroken. He sat in the car before he started the engine, and he said, Dear Jesus, I'm so sorry. 80-plus years old, and that's all he knew to pray. And the Holy Spirit said, do you think I would hear that prayer from a child and not from an 80-plus-year-old man if he sincerely offered that prayer? And Carl knew, my dad is in heaven because of a childhood prayer that he finally prayed in sincerity. Because we must be his witnesses. What if Carl hadn't taken the nerve to say, would you like me to pray for you, Dad? And hear that rough voice say, you don't think I know how to pray? And then willingly say, okay, Dad, you lead in prayer and I'll agree with you. I want you to know that when you yield your will to God's will, He will use you to fulfill His purpose in your life. Matthew chapter 28, verse 16 says, Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw Him, they worshipped, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And lo, and surely, I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Good news. This same Jesus said that He is with us today, just like He was with them on the day of ascension. For He is with us in spirit. And His presence is known even in this sanctuary this morning, but thankfully not just here, but in every sanctuary across the world where people like you and I gather in like precious faith, knowing that the Lord is here, and He is with us, and He will use us for His glory. This same Jesus, John wrote in John 14, Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. Hallelujah. This same Jesus said, I will come back. I will be with you until the end of the age. And when that time comes, I will come and gather you home, that where I am, there you may be also. He's coming again. He's coming for those who are born again, who put their faith in Him and study His Word, to allow His will to be unfolded into their life, and know that they are unlimited in power because of His power. They deny themselves, they take up their cross, and they do His will, and they go forward into all the world to proclaim the gospel, aware of the false teachings out there and the deception that the world is in. I should be praying for my brother, my youngest brother. He was raised with the same parents that I was raised with, but he was raised a long time after me. I graduated high school when he started kindergarten. He didn't know me growing up. I got out of college and went right into the ministry. I wasn't in the ministry very long, and I married Ambra. And we've visited my parents over the years, but we didn't live with them. But when my brother was probably in his mid-20s, Amber, you think? He came to live with us. He lived with us for a couple of years at that point in time. And not too long ago, he wrote a memory of growing up. And one of the things that he remembered was his father and mother were deeply religious people who had a tremendous faith in a God that, as he wrote it, he never accepted. And I can tell you today, he's got everything the world would offer, but he's very unhappy. He's not well physically. He's very unhappy. He's been taught the same truth that I've been taught, but he's rejected it over and over and over again. Tomorrow, Amber and I are going to visit him for 3 or 4 days. We're going to work in his little apartment and help him get things organized there. And I'm praying. I said to Amber yesterday, and I've thought about it for a couple of days now, he's got everything the world has to offer, and he's miserable. He hates life. So much so that he's told one of my brothers, I'm going to kill myself. And I say, why don't you just try what Dad taught you? Why don't you just try inviting Jesus into your heart? And start reading the scriptures. And it will be our task over the next few days as we bear witness of Christ with him. Would you pray God would do a work in his life? I'd love to come home on Thursday thinking, wow, what a wonderful change in his life has been wrought since Jesus came in to his heart. The same Jesus said, you must be born again. You must study the word and eat my flesh. You must be careful of the teachings of this world, and you must deny yourself. You must be my witnesses, but I will not leave you alone. I will be with you always. And I promise I will come again, that where I am, there ye may be also. I'm going to sing a couple of songs this morning in closing, but I don't want to be a vocalist. I asked Scott earlier in the week, he says, Pastor, you're too old. I don't know all those old songs. I said, thanks, Scott. Make me feel really good. But I have to believe he knows them. He just doesn't remember them because he's got such a short memory, and I have such a long memory. He said, Pastor, I'll do my best to do songs. I said, Scott, you go ahead and lead worship. Didn't he do a beautiful job this morning? I told him earlier in the week, and I'll tell you again this morning, I appreciate you, brother, because of your willingness to lead and be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And I think I could probably sing a lot of the songs you sang this morning. I knew them all, but they fit right in. But here's a song, and I'll just do one this morning. If you know the song, join in. Why don't you stand with me in closing? You've been sitting a very, very long time. You can adjust your clock, spin it just a few more minutes, and gain back your hour. But this song simply says, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's something about that name. Kings and kingdoms will all pass away, but there's something about the name of Jesus. And I want, as we close out our time together this morning, for you to focus your whole attention on Jesus. I don't want us to stand here gazing up into heaven as he is taken from us, but I want us to realize that he is with us, and he's going to go with us as we go this morning from this place into the world at large. But we are going as his witnesses today. So invite him. If you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, right now, say, Lord, would you forgive me of my sin? Come into my life. And begin to study. Start with the Gospel of John in the New Testament. It's a great place to start to get to know God's Word. And then be faithful in church. And don't be shy to tell Pastor Wayne, I invited Jesus into my heart. And I think I need to be baptized in water as a public confession of my faith in Jesus Christ so that I can be a witness for him. Jesus, Jesus.